Hello and welcome to the Raising Athletes podcast. My name is Kirsten Jones. I'm a peak performance and sports parenting coach, the author of Raising Empowered Athletes, now coming into its almost third year, and the host of this podcast for the last 8 years, where I love what I get to do, which is talk to people, connect with other athletes, with coaches, with people in the youth sports space who are all trying to figure out what this giant $43 billion hairball, how we got here and how we can make it better for our kids, for ourselves, and for our communities. And so today's guest reached out a couple weeks ago. We had a great conversation, so many shared experiences and like-minded. He's a parent, he's a coach, he played at a high level, and I'm just excited to have you on today, Brian, to talk about your journey and what you're trying to accomplish now with where you are.
Yeah, thanks, Kirsten. This was the highlight and will be the highlight of my week. I really appreciate you having me on today. It was a result of reading your book, so I have this insatiable desire to learn more and to provide some feedback and shared experience across the youth space as I try to find rooms with like-minded folks and sharing those experiences. So that's what brought us together today. And after reading your book, and that was why I reached out, is so many things that we align on. So I thought it'd be great to come on the podcast and share some of those stories again to folks that are out there listening. So again, excited to be here today.
Oh, thank you. And I understand this is you're a first timer. You're part of the first timer podcasting club. So I love, this is so fun. You're going to have a blast. This is just a fun format, I think, and I get lots of people reaching out saying, "Oh, that one guest, and you guys had this great conversation about X or Y," and we get to take it wherever we feel like it goes. But I think you get to feel like you're in the bedroom, in the locker room with a coach,
Yes.
with a parent on the sidelines, and understanding some of the ins and outs and some life lessons that you have to share. So let's start with your journey to Stanford and playing, and what was your childhood like? Where did you grow up? How many sports did you play? Was this something that you were deemed you needed to do, or was it something that came around later?
Yeah, so great question. So my background, I grew up just outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in a small suburban town called South Park, and started my journey as a young 5 or 6 year old in sports, playing pretty much all sports. My dad was very much a big proponent of playing as many sports as possible and figuring out what would stick or what you love or what you're passionate about. So started that journey. I played baseball, I played football, I played basketball, I played golf, I played soccer. I wasn't blessed with a lot of speed, so soccer didn't last very long. That wasn't my calling as a young athlete, but it was good to try all those in order to figure that out. And I'm a big proponent of that in terms of as a dad and a coach of encouraging kids to play as long as they can multiple sports. So grew outside of there. I was fortunate enough on my journey to find baseball was the pathway where I would play at a higher level, and so was recruited by a lot of colleges, and ended up landing on Stanford and was blessed to get a scholarship there. An interesting tidbit on landing on Stanford: the coach, I'm actually going down to Stanford this coming weekend. They're honoring the 1990 team. We were the winningest team in the history of Stanford. So just ironically, today we're on this call. I'm actually going down there for a reunion this weekend. And the coach, and we talked a lot about the coach there, the assistant coach, Dean Stotts, just wrote a book called 108 Double Stitches. And what he talked about is the recruiting process. And I'll never forget him coming in our house and meeting with my folks and myself and talking about recruited me as, "Brian, you seem like you're a really good student. You seem like you're a really good athlete. If you want the ultimate challenge, then Stanford would be for you." He didn't say you'll play. He didn't say whatever. He just said you'll get an opportunity. And I love that. So fortunate enough to get a scholarship there. I chose Stanford. I ended up playing at a very high level there. I was 10-1 as a freshman. I was a pitcher. So pitched pretty well there. Dealt with adversity my sophomore year. I was hurt. So I missed most of my sophomore year and then came back as a junior and was fortunate to be drafted by the Baltimore Orioles as a junior. So I continued my playing career with the Orioles for 8 seasons. Made it to the major leagues in 1996. And most of my career was in the minor leagues. I did have Tommy John surgery, and I did not come back playing better. So I ended up having to retire at the ripe old age of 28. And then I had to go get a real job. So that's when I started in a real job, got my sales job working for Pepsi. So I learned the ropes of sales, which was very instrumental in terms of getting my feet wet and understanding what it takes to be successful in sales. And then I got what I felt like was, again, back to my journey where I feel like I got a huge opportunity to move to Boston and work for Mizuno. So I worked for Mizuno for 10 years and I sold baseball, softball, and volleyball. And I learned how to cover a territory and I learned how to manage a territory and I learned the business side at a very high level of managing all of New England. So that was a ton of fun. And then I wanted to go manage people. So this is where our paths kind of cross, Kirsten, in terms of Nike. So I wanted to go manage people. I wanted to step up. And so I took a job with Nike, which moved me to where I'm at now in Rockland, California. So I've been here, I think maybe I said 12 years earlier to you. It might be closer to 15. That's what moved me here is the job with Nike. Spent 6 years with Nike, loved it there, and then I wanted more again, searching for more. So then I got a job with Foot Locker and East Bay team sales. So I stayed here, but I took on greater responsibility, greater role. That was a lot of fun and learning the other side of the business. So I'd always worked for manufacturers, and then I worked on the other side, which was the distributor. So in an effort to continue to learn, that was a great opportunity there. And then I ended up where I want to end up, and the reason it brings us together and where I'm at today in my life, which is I wanted to get back in baseball and I wanted to find a way where I can give back a lot of the experience I'd learned along the way, not only from sports, but from the business side. So I saw it, I went on the journey of looking for a job in baseball and brought me to the role I'm in now, which is I'm the VP of US Sports Camps. I manage baseball, softball, and football. And I oversee and work with probably 300 plus directors to put on camps. We're the official licensee of Nike. So I maintained kind of my ties with Nike. So we run Nike camps across the country. I manage those three sports. We have several other sports. We put over 200,000 kids through camp. So that's one area where I feel like I can get closer to sort of providing unique experiences and joy. I affectionately say skills and smiles back to young folks. And so I love what I do. I love the team that I work with. And then I'm even on a further journey, which is I coach high school baseball. I coach the pitchers and I give back there and share experiences. And I'm sure we'll get into some of those things in terms of my philosophy. I think sometimes it's contrarian to what's out there, leaning heavily into development and different things like that. But that's kind of where I'm at today is coaching high school baseball, VP of US Sports Camps, creating great experiences for young folks to come and have a good time and learn skills and more importantly, have smiles and joy around sport. So that's ultimately my story.
When we look back on the story and the way you tell it, it sounds like you just went from one thing to the next and it was all like just a straight line, right? Like everything was, oh, and then this happened and that happened. But pre-internet, when he was sitting in your living room, right? Like were you sending VHS tapes or how did Stanford even hear about you?
Wow, great question. So never saw me pitch. So they relied on resources. My guess is, I think it's through professional scouts, never saw me pitch. And then I ended up my senior year, I played for the junior Olympic team. Coach came and finally watched me pitch and told my parents in the stands, I think he'll pitch for us. So up to that point is we'll give him an opportunity. And then he saw me pitch for the first time. I'd already committed. And he's like, yeah, I think Brian will pitch for us. And so that's the first time. So it's pretty crazy that, they recruited me sight unseen.
And then amazing, you get there and you have a 10-1 season and you're like, this is the best thing ever. And then you hit a headwind that a lot of kids are hitting much earlier than sophomore year in college, which is to get injured. And to have to overcome an injury, not only physically, but mentally, how do you come back when they're still recruiting, bringing new talent in? Do you remember back to your 19, 20-year-old self and how you overcame that?
Yeah, so it was very difficult. An injury is really, really difficult. I remember a conversation I had with my father, and I was struggling quite a bit. And he had said, in realizing that I was pretty down, and said, "Well, maybe you ought to come home. Maybe you ought to come home." And I remember in that moment and thinking to myself, like, I'm not a quitter. I'm a fighter. And I thought about that a lot. And I didn't necessarily realize that in the moment, but I had a lot of passion for wanting to be great. And I worked really hard. And in that moment, I realized I have to work harder, both mentally and physically, to stay in school and to work through watching the others play and sort of get ahead and that feeling. But I dug deep. I remember going to ride the stationary bike late at night and making sure I stayed in really good shape and really worked on being in great shape so that when I came back, I would be prepared. I went to the training room, every single day and worked really, really hard on that. And I didn't know now at the time as a dad and like where that's at, because as working with kids now, that like, yeah, it was really the passion and the hard work to want to get to and want to be really good that sort of drove me through that. And it's not easy.
Who were you getting counsel from aside from your parents? Was there a sports psychologist on staff? Was the coaching staff there for you? Was it teammates, a girlfriend? Like, did you have anybody there to support you through the mental side of it?
Gosh, I roomed in a suite with three other folks, so there were four of us. So it was the friends. I was in a fraternity. Um, I remember too, now that we're on the story, one of my roommates was because I was struggling and all that. And so the guy that, Rob Robbins was the guy's name who was managing the fraternity in the house we're in. He's like, okay, we need a change because maybe we need a change, just a change of scenery. And it was just more of a change of scenery. So I moved upstairs and my roommate then was John Lynch, the general manager of the 49ers. So I roomed with him for about 3 or 4 months and just a little bit of a change of scenery and us sharing sort of, stories. And he's had injuries and he had a little bit of a sore back. And so he's working through some of that stuff. And I just remember that time, that little bit of break sometimes and leaning into my friends and my teammates, along with the trainer who was very instrumental in that and keeping me positive. I think those were the things that really kept me going and got through that.
It's amazing. I love hearing those stories because it's funny how we go back to our 20-year-old self and you're like, and then I got injured and then I played again. But I have a lot of clients who they call because we're in the middle of that, or my son right now is actually on the tail end of a major injury. And those can be deal breakers. And yet they can also be the moments that you're like, wow, I actually learned a lot about myself and and like you said, I was a hard worker and I want to come back. And your parents gave you the full on, you can tap out if you want, and you chose not to.
Yeah, it's a great story. So you jog my memory, and this is a good one to share. So I had come back. And worked really hard when I was with the Orioles. So I'll jump a little bit forward there, and I had actually retired 2 years before I actually officially retired. Like I retired once officially, and then I retired again. And the story behind that is I was deathly afraid of surgery, and my arm was hurting. And I was trying to work through it, and I knew I was destined to have Tommy John. I was just like, it was just not getting any better. And I'll never forget, this is the great story to share, I feel like, for folks out there. I'll never forget, I was married at the time. I was newly married. And I remember like having an outing where I had made the decision, like, it's time to do the surgery. And I remember my wife in that moment feeling really sorry for me and like, oh my God, Brian, you've worked really hard. You're working so hard. I feel so sorry. I get a little choked up on this because in that moment, I'm like, don't feel sorry for me. This is just a moment in time for me to go get this fixed. I need you to support me through this surgery because I'm deathly afraid about having it. So I'm going to get through it, make that decision, and just continue to support me, and I'll come back. I will make it back. So don't feel sorry for me. And in that moment, she understood, and I appreciated her feeling sorry for me because I was feeling sorry, but like, there's just a weird gear there of like, okay, this is just a moment in time for me and a blip on the radar, and I'm going to work really hard to get back. And I remember reading, and I was fortunate enough to meet Kobe when at Nike, and he talked about his Achilles injury, and they designed a shoe, and he walked through the whole story around the shoe, and the red on the back was the Achilles to symbolize all the hard work that he had gone through. And I'm like, yeah. And like, if you listen to, one of my favorite things is to listen to him is when I think he's talking to Jimmy Kimmel, and he's working through, like, he was feeling sorry for himself, and he's rising back through that conversation about be the bear, right? Pray for the bear. Pray for the Bear. I encourage people to go listen to that, because Pray for the Bear is the attitude he had, is the attitude that I had in that moment of like, pray for the Bear, because there are doubters. I'm going to come back.
Yeah. And then you get to the other side of that, and you had 2 more years you played?
Yeah, I came back, had Tommy John. I worked back through Tommy John. Not kidding you, first outing back, a little bit of rain, whatever. I go pitch in Double-A, strain my groin. I'm back down to spring training. My wife was like, "Oh my gosh, Brian." So I had to work back through that. And then I got back to Triple-A, and I pitched for about 2 months after that. And I realized I just wasn't the same pitcher that I was before. Hardest thing I had to do in life is to retire officially for the second time. And I spent a year after that, a lot of issues mentally from like panic attacks and decoupling. And this is a great lesson I talk to a lot of parents about. Baseball is something I do, not who I am. So in that moment, I spent a year of decoupling as Brian, the baseball player, and Brian as Brian, which is way more than baseball. It's just something I do.
Yeah, well, I like to talk about that with kids too. It's what you do, it's not who you are. And
Yes.
I think one of the weaknesses of youth sports is their identity becomes so wrapped up, even more than our generation. I mean, I remember graduating and okay, I wasn't going to go play pro. I could have gone to go play beach volleyball back in California, but I knew I wasn't going to make a living at it. I wasn't going to be like a long-term thing. And I remember feeling like, okay, I've had a really great run. I got to play D1, like I had a lot of fun, and I'm ready to figure out what's next. But a lot of kids, get it taken away from them, or by injury or by choice, not choice, like they get cut, or, and they feel like they
Yep.
get their moment, right? Then you go into your next moment is, okay, now you're 28 years old and you've had obviously a phenomenal college career and a great pro career, but your resume doesn't have any work experience on it, I'm guessing, or very minimal. So now you've got to reinvent yourself there. What of those lessons did you use, asking for a friend who has a son going through this right now, like to sell to get that first job?
Yeah, that was really hard. I was under the assumption of a Stanford graduate with economics that I would go out and find a job very easily. And I knocked on a lot of doors, and I chuckle. One of the doors I knocked on was, I think it was Coors at the time, in a beer company, and they had asked me, and I chuckle a little bit about, they'd asked me the question, "Oh, what do you think it takes from a marketing perspective to sell?" And I drew a, like, oh, the association that they're responsible of the Orioles and like stuff like that versus, the way it's merchandised or the quality of the product or the features and benefits, all the things that I've learned after the fact. But I look back on my young self then, I was so naive. I had no sales experience, and I learned a lot. So I think what really separates a lot of athletes at times, I think, when in the interview, and ultimately, and I look back on it, is the resilience, the adversity, the hard working, the effort. When you get knocked down, you get back up. And those are a lot of the qualities that I think the interview's appreciated, but like there's no substitute from experience. So like I tell folks, you're on a life journey, right? And let's say you want to go somewhere, and it's never a linear journey. It's an up and down. And sometimes you got to take jobs. And I look back on that. I took that sales job and I cut my sales teeth on that. I had a great mentor, a great boss that I still stay in touch with there, who took me under his wing, and he educated me and the ups and downs of sales. And what I had to learn a lot from being an athlete versus sales is the time horizon. The athlete, we got to make adjustments like that. The sales cycle is a lot longer. I still struggle with that, and try to be patient with that. But I think it's just the qualities that you bring in that interview when you're looking for the next job. There's no substitute for what you learn on the field. It is really, really difficult to play a sport, especially playing a sport at a high level. And you learn about how to deal with different coaches and managers. Some you really like, some you don't like. How do you navigate? You have to learn how to navigate in baseball. Bad call from an umpire. Do you have bad body language? Or do you sort of bring that internally and say, okay, you get some criticism or some feedback, I would say, from the coach, just like your manager. Do you treat that as like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go hide in the corner? Or you take that as feedback and say, that's what I got to improve upon, and find your voice, and then talk to your manager about what's it going to take the next step? Because I saw this person get ahead of me. Are you going to go to the water cooler and talk, negatively? Or are you going to lean into your own and self-reflect and say, what am I going to do different? Also a good teammate. Are you a good teammate? Are you showing up with the team and are you pulling for one another? Even if the other teammate gets more recognition or gets promoted, are you pulling? Are you happy for them or are you not? There are so many great qualities that I feel like comes from experience. So like my advice to young folks that come out that are trying to find is like, take that job. Like, I think sales is a really good area to take. It's a good learning ground, but like find that opportunity and lean into the qualities that sort of you learned on the field because they're very applicable off. And that's kind of how I coach. I teach through life lessons. I share a lot of life lessons and try to parallel that to things outside of sport because at some point for many, they're going to end very early. 99 point whatever percent will never go play pro. And so the reality is I know 100% of them will want to be good contributors into society. And that's ultimately what parents want. So sports and through the lens of sport is one of the best, I believe, one of the best training grounds for life.
We like to say in the Jones house, have an athletic response to adversity. And by that, like, now that you're not in the sport anymore, but what would you do if, you got cut or you got benched, or are you going to go sit and pout, or are you going to decide, okay, what do I need to do to get better, to get back on the court, or and the agency that it requires to do that. I can either blame somebody else or I can own what have or haven't been doing and take action.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reading a book called Grit now. It's passion and effort. And I look at today and kids don't have grit. Like a lot of kids don't have grit. I look at parents sometimes and it's easy to blame everybody else except reflect and say, hey, like for instance, baseball. I talk to the kids all the time, like they're all on their phones, right? With the advent of phones and social media and all that, one of the big things I talk to them about is like, go look at your phone usage. What are you spending your time on? You want to be a great baseball player? How much are you watching baseball? And they all gasp because I know they're not really watching much baseball. And I say, if a TikTok dance came out tomorrow, you would know it the next day. And I just basically stop right there. It's natural learning. I've learned that like natural learning, a baby learns how to walk. No one shows it how to walk. It watches, it observes, and it learns how to walk. That's how I learned how to pitch. I watched the pitching on TV and I went outside, threw the ball against the wall. So they don't watch enough. And then more importantly, they don't have grit. It's like when things get hard, that's when the real learning happens, is the failures, the mistakes. When things get hard is when the real learning happens.
I read an article the other day about, the cell phone really took off in 2010. So this whole generation, I mean, my oldest is 25, so he was born in 2000. So it was right when he was 10, 11, 12. Like, these kids have never had life without phones. And we grew up where we didn't, I didn't get a phone until I was 25. So they've now, that's their status quo. And I saw it correlated to the change in, this is a funny one, but it actually makes the point, which is children having diapers. When they had cloth diapers, kids used to, and I want to say it was like in the 30s and 40s, would potty train within 12 months. Well, when something's wet against your skin, you don't like it, so you ask to be changed, and the brain starts to realize, oh, this is uncomfortable, I need to do something different. Well, then they move to these Pampers and these, paper diapers, and you can sit in a wet diaper all day and look, it doesn't chafe you. Well, it also doesn't tell you that you're uncomfortable. And
yeah.
The phones are doing the same thing. We're like sitting in a wet diaper all day and we are not realizing, and these kids, and I'm working with a high school team right now too. And do you want to win this weekend? Yes. Okay, what are we willing to do? Okay, well, we're all on our phones all the time. Okay, so what are we willing to do? Well, we could put it down like 5 minutes before we go on the court. Oh, but we don't know each other. We don't talk to each other. We don't trust each other. So all of those are elements of us not engaging and not making eye contact and not, wanting to actually get to know one another, because we would rather sit in a wet diaper and again, I'm not blaming the kids. Like, this is now, but this is where we are, is they don't even know that they could have potty trained, 6 months ago. They could have actually been more independent. And how do we help them? Like, what rules do you have for your teams around, or do you just let them decide, or how do we balance that?
Yeah, it's It's a mindset. It's a mindset and tone, especially as a coach. It's how it's delivered and it's the mindset. And I'll give you an example. One of my favorite coaches um, just left the Steelers, but his mindset is it's not what you're capable of, it's what you're willing to do.
Tomlin,
And,
right?
yep, Mike Tomlin. And so, how do I share that? I'll give you an example how I share that. I share that like a lot through practice and like, encouraging effort, right? It speaks to the effort, right? So, my son just pitched yesterday through a complete game, 70 pitches in 7 innings, right? The team is ecstatic. I'm happy for him, right? I'm proud, Papa. The team is doing great. I started off by saying we didn't have practice on Friday because the team had a good win on Thursday. We normally practice Friday. The coach said we'll skip Friday. My son and I went to go watch his older brother play football at Davis. They had their spring game. I said we're going to miss practice on Saturday, which is when he would have thrown his bullpen. I preach routines. We throw a lot of bullpens. We stick to a routine. That's a big topic as well. We stick to a routine. So he was going to miss a bullpen. I'm like, okay, we got to go Friday. Text your catcher. We should go throw a bullpen Friday. We did. We did throw the bullpen Friday, and he pitched really well in the bullpen and then pitched well on Monday. I started off the post-game speech not about, oh my gosh, great job. I said, hey guys, this is an example of it's not what you're capable of, it's what you're willing to do. He was willing to go through a bullpen on Friday to stick to the routine. It shouldn't be by accident that we saw the performance that he had on Monday. And it shouldn't be by accident, guys, that we're sticking to routines as pitchers of why the pitching as a collective is doing amazing. So in that moment, I didn't realize this was happening. We got a guy on the team that got promoted to pitch JV on Thursdays of the week. We play Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. He got promoted to pitch Thursday, but he plays with us at first base Monday and Tuesday. He's supposed to throw bullpens on Monday with our team, like during the game or after the game. So we missed the week before. I caught it too late, and he was already gone on that Monday the week before. So in that moment, when I said that about routines, guess what that kid did? He went up and found the coach and said, I want to throw a bullpen. And I didn't catch until he came down, and I said, did that speech about routines get you? And he goes, yeah, it did. Great lessons. The lesson about routine, but more importantly, the lesson about finding your voice. I was proud of him to find his voice in a moment. We were so excited. We have to clean up the field. Everyone's running around. Our catcher caught the whole game, and the catcher is amazing. He's like, it takes a village and a team. And he came down and he found his voice to basically say, I need to throw that bullpen. That is a lot of great lessons there.
And in a positive way. It wasn't in a, you didn't do this and this sucked. And I feel like so much we are reacting to what didn't happen than giving them the opportunity to step up.
Yeah. And I mean, there's so like, I'm learning a lot as the coach, probably more than I am probably giving back to the players. And I'm surprised, like I'm going through them, like, it's very surprising to me, to be honest, like at times, and I shouldn't be surprised, but I am. And so, for instance, we struggled in the bullpen. Well, we did well in the bullpen throwing strikes. We struggled bringing that out to the pitching mound. I talked to a friend. Actually, I'll be honest. I talked to an AI app, I guess, if you will, the AI app, and I said, "This is the." And I work with a lot of different opportunities, try to increase value in our camps, right? In our camps. So I'm always looking at how do we increase the experience, right? So this app came across, and the guy's like, "Hey, Brian, talk into it. I got it playing right now." And I said, "Give it an example." I said, "Hey, I'm having my guys are throwing great bullpens, but we're walking more than I would like in the game. What would you advise?" And the app came back and said, in not so many words, I would create more chaos in the bullpen to replicate sort of the chaos in the game. And I said, what do you mean? They said, well, for instance, I would put a batter in there to stand in there. Well, what do you know it? I put a batter in there and a teammate, and I do bullpens all the time with a teammate standing in there. And that made all the difference. Oh my gosh. It made all the difference. And now it's working. And so then it started working. And one final straw that I said to this is I got the kids together at the end and I said, look, we need a swagger. We need a swagger. Like we're throwing great bullpens, guys. Like I'm telling you, like, trust me, they're really good bullpens. I don't know why it's not working other than you guys aren't working out with confidence. And I told them, I said, look, here's the philosophy that I had when I was pitching well. I said, here's the ball. You can't hit it. And then I went further and I said, this is the philosophy. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Go sit down in the dugout. And Kirsten, I can't, our ERA is like 2.8. We're walking a little over 3 an inning when the average freshman team is like 4.5 to 5 walks on average a game. So we are literally, and my son throwing 70 pitches in 7 innings, didn't have a lot of strikeouts. That's the sexy part of baseball, is strikeouts from pitching. Only had 3 strikeouts, but 70 pitches, 10 pitches an inning. I was like, that, guys, that's what we're trying to do. And when they hit the ball hard, I reinforce it. Balls hit hard during the game. I'm like, they're to have their head down, like, oh my gosh, that hitter smoked it. I'm like, that's an out. Like, what are we doing? Like, that's awesome. So it is the tone, the delivery, sort of the way, the culture you invite. I'm learning that is if you create a sort of an environment around mistakes are okay and a philosophy around what the swagger looks like. Because the boys on the side, they're cheering like, good morning, good after. Like, I love it. Like, they know all that. And like, it's just like, I'm like, that brings great joy to me as I get to play a small part in that of shaping how they think, not only in the pitching, but in life. Like, that's a life thing. Like, here it is, just like the injury thing. Like, here, I'm coming back. Pray for the bear.
At least 2 things you introduced there too, maybe with or without their knowledge, but one, you raised the bar. So when we have things that make us uncomfortable, and then we have to raise our level of competition, like Chad had told you, but like the best teams perform practice outside of their comfort zone so that when they're in the game, it actually is easier, right? Like, you know, having the bar raised. I don't know if you've ever read The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin, but like he talks a lot about having a beginner's mindset and understanding that when I actually practice above what I think I'm capable of, and you implemented by just putting a batter in the box, like, oh, okay, now all of a sudden I've got to mentally think. And then the second is the mantra, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Like, without saying, come on, we need to strike them out. Come on, wait, 3 up, 3 out. Like, we now have adopted a saying that we as a team know exactly what the goal is without even, being repetitive.
And that's where common philosophy in coaching is I got to get all over them. And if you come out to the games, all the parents will say, man, Brian hardly ever yells. But like what I've learned, and I've been criticized for not, like, in times of struggle, and I don't focus on the winning or losing. Matter of fact, one of my biggest sayings I came up with, I think in my own mind, like 3 months ago or whatever, are games or pulse checks on development. It always checks me. If I say that to myself, that a game is a pulse check on development, and I tell the kids that whether we win or lose, it's always about where we are in development. And I understand it's always about the process. So it always is about the process, about routines, about getting better. And if you have a bad day, it's just, I'm in the process of getting better, right? I got to work on during the week. It is amazing, the mindset when you do that, because it softens the pressure. And ultimately, if I soften the pressure, I know for athletes, if I soften that pressure and I'm seeing the results of it, they could perform at high levels and achieve things that otherwise would have put ceilings on them for fear. And so, like, I've learned that at a young kid, I had those fears, I had those levels that it was hard to break through those. But now that's my role. I feel like if I can go out there and eliminate that and have them free to make mistakes, feel less, even when I go out to the mound, it's intentional. My wife always says, why do you crouch down? I crouch down because I look up to them and say, what do you want to do? Like, what do you want to do here? What do you want to do? And I'm guiding, I'm not telling, I'm just supporting. And that's taken a lot of practice to get to that point. But like, that's where my mindset is. Like, I want to tell, but I'm like, I learned stuff. I had a pitcher the other day didn't throw a change up the whole game. We go out, we got the big hitter up, number 4 hitter, big guy. Like, what do you want to do? He goes, well, I like my change up. Didn't throw it all game. We threw 5 change ups and struck him out. So they're growing, right? So like, that's my job, is to just be a guidance and a supporter. And that's what I want to tell parents is like, don't tell, like, where is your son or daughter? Like, ask them, support them through it, be okay with it. The hardest thing about a parent is to deal with failure, to sit there and deal when your kid is failing and upset and very sad. Are you supporting that? Or are you going to the coach, going to the teacher, going to whomever and sort of being that ice scraper of like getting in the way and like shaping? Or are you just letting them go through it? And I've learned through 5 kids, if I let them go through it and I'm just there to support and guide and share, and even my son who's like, you're a walking, talking Instagram or whatever, but he's starting to get it because I study greatness. And what he learns through that is I want to be a great teacher and a great coach and a great dad. And so I study it. And so what he's learning is dad studies it. I'm on a podcast today because guess what? I want to be greater. I want to learn. I want to share. I want to, I read your book. All these things are like what I want to share with parents, and why I'm on today is like, that's my purpose. That's my mission, is just to talk about what I've learned. And I'm starting to see the results, and I'm a believer even beyond what I already believed, because I can see that philosophy work when coaches feel that you have to yell and get into them. And I don't feel that way. You can set expectations up here without yelling.
So for you to get to the level you got to, you have to be incredibly competitive. And what I hear a lot, so let me play devil's advocate a second, just to so we can learn here.
Yeah.
Yet you are able to pull yourself out of this situation where, of course, you want to win. Of course, like that's nobody signs up to lose the game. But if you're able to say, what you're saying about process, I love it.
What's the process? What do you mean?
You have a saying. You mentioned you have a saying around your goal is not about the win; it's about the process, right?
Yeah, it's ultimately about the process. Yeah, I've got a lot of different triggers that I'll say about the process, but I focus inherently on the process. Yes.
Because I see that a lot with great coaches is like, in fact, the Stanford women's volleyball coach, I think it was this last year, they were number 5 and they were playing Texas, and he was being interviewed and they're like, oh, this is such a huge test. And what is it going to say if you guys don't beat Texas right now? And he says, I'm excited to learn. Like, this is going to be a great test for us to see what we need to work on. And he completely saw it as an opportunity for us to figure out what it is we can get better at. Like, that's what I hear you saying, which is hard for a lot of, and parents who are listening who also may be coaching, right? Like, how do you come to that? Is that your personality, or is that somebody else modeled that for you? Or is that just something you've come to after 5 kids and days and years and months of coaching?
Great question. That's through a lot of failure on my end. Like, that's just what I teach, right? A lot of failure. I had my oldest son played baseball, little league. I'll never forget, because I learned this from a positive coaching alliance on what you should say versus what I was saying. So the car ride home is a very interesting thing, right? I remember it as the young boy and my mom and dad going at it, and like, just based on my performance, and like I sat back in that back seat, and like it was, whether it was going to be good or bad depending on how I played. That's a lot of pressure on a young person. And I didn't know it at the time, but now that I'm the dad and I'm on the other side of that, I repeated that mistake, and I'm in the car, and we had a bad outing pitching one time, and I'll never forget on the field, he threw a 0-2 curveball. For those of you listening, if you're a pitcher, you don't throw an 0-2 hanging curveball, right? So he threw it, and his buddy hit a home run. And in that moment when he hit a home run, I'm on the bench putting my hands up. He's on the mound looking at me, putting his hands up, right? And it was rough. And then we got in the car after, and I'm rehashing that. And I stopped because I had read Double Goal Coach by Positive Coaching Alliance, which is one of the great books that changed my philosophy on mistakes are okay. Their acronym is ELM, effort, listening, and learning, and mistakes are okay. ELM is their acronym. And so I practiced that. I'm like, time out. Like, in my mind, I'm like, time out. His name was Tom. I'm like, Tom, I'm doing a lot of the talking. What do you want? He said, I don't want you to come to the game anymore. And I was the assistant coach. And I didn't come to the game, and I sat behind the trees watching, though. And I get a little emotional on this because he got better. And that's when I learned, PCA says, when you get in the car, I love watching you play. And I really meant a lot to me, because in that moment I realized, and as a parent, and all the parents out there, it's fleeting, right? It goes by fast. And ultimately we love watching them play. And I set out on the journey of really learning. I read the Double Goal Coach. To give you an example, Jim Thompson, the founder of the PCA, I called him up. I went down and talked to him for 3 hours down at Stanford. And I really dove into that. And it was like a reflection on myself as a young man and like what my dad was doing. And all parents mean well, right? But my dad was pretty tough on me. And like in terms of like he saw the potential, like all parents do. And there was a lot of pressure there. And I learned one of the biggest things I learned that I know now, which is it's their journey, not mine. And the hardest thing for me as a parent is to separate the fact of like, I'm a major league pitcher, ex-major league pitcher. My son is expected to be an amazing pitcher. And when he's not, I bore that pressure. I think a lot of parents bear that pressure from a societal thing. Like, hey, in society, my son's doing great. It elevates me in society and the friend network and whatever. And they feel that pressure to uphold that. And that rests on the kid. In some cases, the worst case is when the kid doesn't want to play it anymore, even if he's very good. The parent just loses their mind because it's like, wait a minute, you're giving up scholarship, you're giving up this, and you're giving up, in today's world, NIL money and all the stuff that's going on. But I learned in that moment, it's their journey, not mine. And now that I have that, I started to go like pulse checks on develop, like games or pulse checks. Everything is framed of the mind in my world is development. And if there's one advice I would give parents is like, you can say you're about development. Do your actions meet your words? I'm proud of the fact that my actions meet my words. And what I'm also very proud of in learning is you can set high expectations and be very much around the things we're talking about. Mistakes are okay. Games are pulse checks, not defining moments, and have that philosophy. Because what I've learned, Kirsten, is the final straw for me was my daughter is getting her doctorate in psychology. She's in her final year and she's writing her thesis on the perceived parental pressure on young adolescents in competitive and recreational sports. And she's doing that, I know, because she's heard dad talk a lot about it and wanted to really see from a clinical perspective of what's going on in the mind. And what I learned, I went to a symposium, a couple with her, and did some talks and whatever. And I had someone talk to me in the crowd and I would just talk about my philosophies. And I mentioned something about being soft. I've been criticized as being soft. Like, hey, you're not that, because it comes across sometimes as not that competitive. I'm competitive as hell. But people are like, oh, you must not be that competitive. Like I am. Like I think you can tell I am. But I know that being positive around that and embracing the process and embracing mistakes as learning and really leaning into that is way better than being negative and yelling and consequential. It just is way better. I know that from my own being a little boy to being the parent to making all these mistakes, it works. And so I now embrace soft as a compliment. So if anyone calls me soft, and we'll be like, Brian, why didn't you yell? The team is struggling and whatever. Why aren't you raising your voice? Like, they know they're struggling. I will talk to them about it. I don't need to raise my voice in order to get my message across because I got my message across. And I will always lean into the attitude and effort. That is one thing I will get into. I won't get into the results. It'll be attitude and effort. You got to show up with that. And that's what I lean into.
Games are pulse checks. I love that. Games are pulse checks, and that's the sentence that stood out for me. How did you repair that relationship? Were you invited with your son? Were you invited back to be an assistant coach, or did you just walk away from being an assistant coach because it was best for him that season?
I walked away and watched him get better, and then ultimately he quit. He quit baseball, but then went on to play lacrosse. And that was a tough decision for him. And I think he just wanted to get away from baseball. I think a lot of pressure there, I think. And he went on, played lacrosse, played football, found his home. I went to the game, loved watching him play. And now he's playing D1 football at UC Davis. And I love watching him play. I just got back from the spring game. He's coming back. He tore his ACL a year ago. First game back, like, talk about like experiences. First game back from tearing his ACL, year recovery. He's at UC Davis. He was at Sierra Junior College a year before. First game back, five plays in, goes down on the field. My wife is in tears of joy watching him finally get back in of a year getting back. 5 plays in, she's not even paying attention. I'm like, oh, guy's down. Oh my gosh, that's Tom. In the tent, game ends. It's right toward the end of the game. In the tent at the end, the doctor's like, oh, I think he tore his ACL on his other knee. My wife is devastated. I'm devastated, but I got to be strong. He was pretty strong. I'm biting my tongue. I get so emotional at this. I'm biting my tongue. The defensive coordinator comes over and is like consoling us. It was so hard. We're walking off the field. The defensive coordinator is like, Tom, you can play here. Tom, great job working back. So sorry for you. We're all so sorry. We stayed in the hotel that night. He went with his friend. It was the best thing to do. My wife and I didn't sleep a wink. Gets the news the next day that they're going to have the MRI, blah, blah, blah. I get in the shower. I've come home. I get in, like, I'm internalizing. I get in the shower the next morning. I started bawling like a baby for like 30 minutes and I didn't even know where it came from. And I knew it was from all the heartache of watching that. And we got good news. I'm sorry, but I get emotional because like it's hard, right? It's for our kids. And like he's a grinder and he's back, played the spring game, had a sack, working hard. And he doesn't feel still great, but he is working really, really hard. And I'm very proud of that. And so like you're feeling the hard, like the emotion around the parent. And I lean into the effort. Like he calls me and I'll be just like, keep grinding. And it's hard. And I just be there to support him and like make sure I texted him. And this is all my learnings is like, I'll look at it for a second because I want to make sure I capture exactly what I texted because I think it's really good to hear this. I'll find it in a second. But like my wife and I, and this is what I said to him. Hey, Tom, can't stop thinking about it today. Mom and I are so proud of you. You've been working so hard and it was great to watch you play today. Have fun with your friends tonight. Love you, Mom and Dad. And so like, that's a lot of practice. He did phenomenal, right? So like I focus on the effort and I've learned that over time is like the effort because that keeps you going rather than, okay, now you're back, you're going to start. Like same with my youngest. So my youngest gets the best of all that. So like I keep them going by the effort. It's the effort, right? It's not, oh, now you're great. You threw a great game. Now you're destined to like play JV varsity. You're going to be an amazing pitcher. It's no, it's all the work. That's the Mike Tomlin quote, right? I lean into that heavily. And I like to think that's a big result of why they're successful.
Bravo. Well done. And you're right. It sucks. And it's just as hard on the parents. And we think, okay, well, I just need to get them to 18 and then they're off to college and then they're not on your mind anymore. No. We are with them.
It never stops.
It never stops. And it's a blessing and it's also very emotional and we're all in. My son too just went through 2 surgeries in 4 months and he's going to come back and he's got big dreams and of course you can go, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I know that you get to choose how you respond to it. And if the biggest gift you get from playing college sports is that you are better at adversity, and I think that was one of the earlier points you raised around grit, which is it is this interesting time for our kids where with the everyone gets a trophy and we move to different teams because our kid is talented and everybody's got a great kid. And so there's this, again, we want them to fight through. And I've had college coaches now say to me, just getting kids to work hard in practice is few and far between. Like, because they've been doing, and I think part of that is fatigue. Part of that is injury. Part of that is mental, like we've been doing this for so long, I'm going to take an off day. Yet, as we know, the Tom Brady's, the Mike Tomlins, the Andre Agassi's, the Kobe Bryant's, like Steph Curry's, why they played for as long as they did was because they had their why was so strong. Getting through any injury was not if, it was when.
Yeah, and I think there's I've had this conversation lately because my son plays football, the youngest plays football and baseball, and they overlap now and it's training year round. And I'm a little contrarian around like focus on the sport at hand. And I'm just making this decision right now, which is like everyone feels he can do both. And we sat with the football coach. I know the high school football coach and like, what's the schedule look like? I arm him with all the facts. I arm my, youngest with all the facts. I ask him what he wants to spend time with his friends. And, and we talk about, okay, you're going to practice twice a day, potentially. What does that look like? And he processes it. Hey, I'll practice baseball in the morning. I'll probably be then. I'll take a nap and then I'll play football in the evening. And he's like, but I want to spend time with the friends. He's also ASB class president. And I'm like, and you start to put that all together. And to your point, Kirsten, it's like, I guide him and say, like, how are you going to do all that? Like, how are you going to do all that? And I'm just the voice in the room of just like, okay, I try to like, I sometimes cross that of maybe going a little too much, but then I pull back and I go, it's your decision. It's ultimately his decision. And I arm him with facts and try to be the parent. I hear this from parents all the time. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they want. My job is to inform him with all the details to make the best decision possible. And that's how I look at it. I sometimes get a little bit overly so, like I think we're all not perfect, right? But I really try to catch myself. Ultimately, it is his decision. I try not to influence it too much, but because I know I can, and I just try to here are the facts. That's why we sat with the coach. Hey, do you have any questions? Here are the questions that I think you should ask, and I let him drive that conversation. And then if I feel there's an opportunity to sort of ask an additional question to arm him, because we're just collecting facts of how much it's going to take.
So what about the parent that says, yeah, but he's 15 or he's 17 or he doesn't know what he wants? I need to help guide him. That's my job. I've been there. I know how hard I worked to get to the level that I played at. And if I don't push him, he won't push himself.
My response to that is their desire to be successful and be great will come from their passion for that sport and their work ethic for that sport. So I learned this. I'm the prototypical, I would categorize myself as the sports dad, but I've got a son at Parsons right now who's super creative, who works harder than anybody I've ever seen like he'll paint in the garage for 15 hours of painting, right? And sweating. It's super hot here in the summer. And I go out there and he's sweating and covered and exhausted. And I learned that it's the passion in the work, which I kind of knew, but like seeing it from a different angle outside of sports was like, that's what it takes. So like, ask what your son or daughter wants to do. I'm a firm believer in we're guiding. Hey, what do you want to do? What do you think it would take? Like my son all the time is like, I want to be a great pitcher. Or the kids on the team are like, I want to be a great pitcher. That's why I talked about the TikTok. Okay, like how much are you watching the game? That's what it takes. That's what it takes. And my job is to arm them with that, not tell them. So I would never say, but I feel like as a parent, if you don't ask and you just make the assumption that they don't know and I got to push, what I've learned from that, they end up doing it for you and not for themselves. And the best thing I've learned from life is accountability. And when you're accountable for your actions, you wake up and you go, I got to do this for myself. Because ultimately, your biggest competitor is yourself, not mom and dad. It is yourself. So like I am on the journey to let parents know that you need to ask, you need to be a supporter. I say support, don't tell. And you should know what's on their mind. And you have to be okay with this. And I'm okay with this is if my son came tomorrow and said, I don't want to play baseball anymore. And I'm okay with that. I absolutely am okay with that. I maybe wasn't okay with that with some of my other kids because it was defining me. I love baseball. I will continue to coach. I will continue to be around because I love doing it. And that's okay. My love isn't conditional upon me being out there with my son. It's because I love helping young folks, including my son. So if he wants to play, great. If he doesn't, he doesn't. But if he comes to me and says, what do I need to do to be a great baseball player? I show him. I show him. And then I say, it's up to you. I don't set up appointments. I don't set up meetings. And I used to do that. You got to go to hitting. I'll set up. I don't. I'm like, here you go. I'll help you connect to people, but it's up to you. I even get to a point where I'm like, he's 15 now. So I'm like, here's a guy that can help you with hitting. Text him. He goes a few times. I'm like, here's his text. He didn't text him back. I'm like, if you want him hit better, you have his, I don't do it. I'm like, here you go. You can text him. But I ask him, like when he says, I want to be a better hitter, I'm like, well, you know the answer to that. We've talked about it. There is pathways. And it's hard because the parent was like, he doesn't know. I got to go do this and I got to go do this for him. I learned that the hard way. If I do it for him, then he resents me. If he doesn't want to do the work, he's going to resent me because I'm doing it because you told me to versus I'm doing it because I want to get better.
Couldn't have said it better.
Big lesson.
Huge life,
Big lesson.
huge life lesson. And that's a lot of the work I do, which is, and we all are human becomings doing the best we can from where we are with what we've got. We've all got a
Yes.
backstory on what our experience was. So we're trying to navigate through that, going, well, if I had had this, then I could have done that. And so we're going to take that away for our kid. And a lot of us are in a position to be able to take away some of the bumps and thinking that we're doing them a favor by saying, I can remove that headwind and that headwind. And then when you actually look at it, you're like, actually, it was that headwind when, I hurt my shoulder, that I then had to pivot to become a setter, that I learned how to do, like that was actually a gift. And those gifts, become those bigger boulders in our road that help us climb to where we're meant to be.
Yeah, we live in a short-term society with short-term results. I tell them all the time we're playing the long game. So when I take a pitcher out, 60 pitches, and the coach is like, and I say he's got to come out, and they're like, oh my gosh, we might, he's our best pitcher, and if we take him out, who do we have next? I'm like, again, games are pulse checks, so it's not about the winning. It's easy for me to make that decision. When you're focused on the winning, it's hard, right? But I'm like, we're going to protect because like we're not trying to win the World Series, and he's not trying to be like this guy is a freshman. We're trying to develop him for the long haul to play varsity and ultimately potentially play in college. So if we stop him at 60 now or let him go to 80, why wouldn't we stop him at 60? Because we're helping him in terms of preserve his health. And then more importantly, we're getting another guy in there for an opportunity to sort of develop. So like it works both ways. And like, it's not a secret. Like we're developing a lot of pitchers on the freshman team. I look at that. It's not one or two. Most teams have one or two really good pitchers. We have 7 or 8 that are doing really well. And I take great pride in that because we're developing like a lot of pitchers. It's because we get them in more often. So that's an example of like, really leaning into that, and it's hard. Like it is really hard for parents, and I've learned, and that's why I go out and I like to share this, because like you saw the emotion earlier. I'm a parent. I've made a lot of mistakes, and the reason I'm on the call today, the reason I try to go talk to as many parents, I say one at a time, is because I want them to think a little bit differently, because the words matter, the tone matters, the mindset matters. And it's really, really hard as a parent to see your kids fail. But I've learned to understand that failure and navigating that is part of the long process of being successful in life.
You and I spoke, whatever it was, a month ago, and talked about what is our why out of this. And I think we have the same why, which is to help people understand that, like, so much of what the successes out of this experience is not going to be on the field, but it's going to be, those kids might not even remember your name 30 years from now, but they'll remember. I remember he would come and he'd kneel down next to me and he'd ask me, what pitch do you want to throw? Right? Like they will remember that. Like I remember how my coach made me feel 35 years later because it was done in a way that valued me.
Yeah, for me, I look at that. I'm like, I try to reflect on what you said there, and like, small piece of me is like, yeah, that's awesome that you make a difference in the kids' lives, but they're making a difference in my life because, like in my day, a lot like pressures of my job and a lot of different things. And then you go out there and you work with the catcher and you see him smiling. And like, I'm teaching the catcher how to like shake your head on an 0-2 to get the hitter guessing on what's coming. And I'm teaching him that. And like the catcher and I have a really good, relationship because I have to call the pitches. So I'm calling the pitches and we're sharing that exchange. And I love that he's such a hard worker. And I love that I play a small piece in his development of learning how to call pitches and how to manage. Like now he's managing pitching, like arms will drop down and I'll be like, hey, go out and tell him his arm's dropping down, and he'll go out there because it means a lot more than coming from coach, right? Coming from your peer. And so like, I think where I'm at today, I feel like I'm learning more from the kids than maybe the kids are learning from me, because I'm learning that like this philosophy works. And it's really hard because a lot of times, like I told you, they'll be like, it's soft, Brian, or, winning. What do you mean winning? Winning's everything. And I'll be like, no, it's not. We're on the journey. And more importantly, the journey here is the life lessons. And I teach that. And sometimes it sounds corny, or sometimes they're like, come on, Brian, like, are you competitive or not? Like it's not about the win. In the grand scheme of things, it is not about the winning. The winning is and what I'm learning is you lean in with that philosophy, you win at a high level because they develop faster.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and I'm learning that. And that's what I think brings a smile to my face is really hard to plug through that. But once you get through that and you trust it and you have confidence, and I lean back when I told you that I tell the kids to have a swagger, I now have a swagger around that philosophy.
Yeah.
And so like I want to share that more with parents around it works versus like it's a philosophy. I really think that I really believe in this, but do the results come as a byproduct of it? I can confidently say, hey, this year for sure, as I work my way up the ladder where kids can execute, you just put them in a frame of mind where they can execute at a high level. It's magical. And I'm learning like that works rather than through like a negative sort of consequential, because it balls you up.
Yeah.
I've been there. It balls you up and tightens you up. And what we need to do is loosen you up. And sometimes that means going through a bad stretch of like time, and we shouldn't get tight. We should actually get even a little more loose, a little more empathetic, a little more, we should go that way. But I've seen a lot of people that go this way, sink or swim mentality. And that's where youth sports is going, is a sink or swim mentality and less on development. And I hear a lot of people talk about development, words, not actions.
Yeah.
And I want to be part of the action. I absolutely, I'm looking to be more and more part of the action because I don't like where it's going. And like, I see my sister's a nurse, for example, and parents are coming in. She'll share with me because her kids play. And she's like, I see parents that'll come in with their son who can't handle, like loves baseball, but isn't playing. And guess what happens? They're medicated. They get medicated. And I'm like, they don't need medication.
Mm-hmm.
They need a different like philosophy around freedom to sort of make mistakes and learn and understand that that's what it's about. Because what I worry about is that pressure and that stress. How do they cope with that down life? If I can teach them at 10, 11, 12, 13 years old how to handle that, they'll be set up down a life of how to deal with a lot of pressure and stress and whatever. And that's why I love sports, is if we teach it that way, it'll provide you with that platform to go, yeah, I get it. Like tough time in my life right now. We all have tough times. How do I navigate it? Oh, I remember coach told me to do this and it's okay. What did I learn? What do I have to try? What do I have to pivot to? Or I have a bad coach. What did coach tell me? How did I deal with the bad coach? Or how did I had a tough teammate. How do I help that teammate out to turn that teammate around? And so I firmly, I embody that. Like I look at sports through that lens, and I look at the wins as anticlimactic as part of the process. And really quick story on this is like, I'm a huge fisherman and I love to fish. And when I catch the big fish that I go to the pond that I'm like, oh, I can catch the big fish. It's how I got there that mattered the most. When I catch the fish, it's anticlimactic because guess what? I'm going to go catch the next biggest fish and the next biggest fish. And if you study great people, that's what they do. They'd like, I'm going to go win a Super Bowl. Okay, now I'm going to win the next Super Bowl. And then I'm going to win the next Super Bowl. It's never enough of great people. It's always the process that they enjoy. And more importantly, high level of proving the naysayers wrong. That motivates a lot of those folks that have accomplished a lot. And now I realize it's that process, and embracing and loving that is what separates great from good.
I just watched the documentary on Pat Summitt, and it's just so beautiful. She had that exact same philosophy. And after she'd won 5 national championships, and they said, how many more do you need? And she just said, I don't need any more. I'm not in it for that. I'm in it to impact lives. And I love the process of us working together to get to, that's the outcome. Cutting down the net is fun, but that is not why I do it.
I think great people all would say that. Like I think of like Steve Jobs. Like he was always about like it was okay, great phone, but never settled, right? Never settled. It was always in the process of making an even greater phone,
Yeah.
and even a greater phone. And you know that from Nike is like reinventing and like coming up with technologies and like telling a great story and like focusing on like pushing the envelope. I think that's one of the challenges. They kind of lost the way of influencing and whatever. And now they're focusing more on like athletes, from my understanding, and like pushing the envelope around what's going on there. And so I feel like you're always in the, like, I've now learned that like I'm in the process of becoming a great coach. Like I'm always going to search for better things, study other people, try to figure out what they're doing. And like, how do I become greater? How do I become greater?
As a parent, as a as
Same.
a spouse, as a friend, as a leader. Yeah, how do we serve and how do we learn and grow? This has been amazing. I think people are going to get so much hearing from, to be able to play in the majors and then to be able to transition into a career and then be able to come full circle as a dad and the life lessons. And thank you for being so open and honest about, it's easy to be like, oh yeah, no, I did a great job and my kids are perfect. No, like that's not reality.
Nope.
And yes, some
Nope.
people have really great kids and they're really, really athletic and they are the trifecta and good on you. But most of us are, we're figuring it out. It's messy and we're, falling down and figuring out how to course correct and helping them do the same.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on as a guest. And like my motivation has always been, I look at it, we coach the players, we even coach the coaches, but who's coaching the parents?
Yeah.
And that's what I love what you're doing, Kirsten, is like we are talking about this to help coach the parents. And my hope is that some folks will listen to this and they'll be like, yeah, like I said the same thing about athletes. I'm the athlete, like I played with Michael Jordan. I'm just like Michael Jordan, right? Like I'm an athlete like him, right? We're all parents in the same boat. We're all trying to navigate this. There is no book on how to be like a great parent or a great sports parent or whatever. It's really just through the learnings of how other navigate this. And my hope is that folks listen to this and continue to listen to the great work that you're doing and sort of share some of these experiences and learnings and maybe pause for a minute and say, hey, maybe I ought to think about that. Maybe I ought to think about in the car ride home of like, hey, I love watching you play versus, getting into the specifics of what happened at that game and that day. So that's really my hope and desire in raising great young folks who end up being great contributors to society. So that's ultimately my goal.
Brian, I want to end the way I end all my podcasts and ask you, how would you finish this sentence? A word, a phrase, what comes to you? What's the first thing that comes to you when I say, the best athletes I know do this?
Embrace the process and love the process.
Completely on brand. I love it.
Yep.
I believe you. And as a very competitive person myself, like, and that's a life lesson I've had to learn. Like we're playing tic-tac-toe. I still want to win. And so parents, I get it. When we are competitive and watching your kid not get to play an entire weekend at a travel volleyball tournament, like not even touch the floor, it's painful. It is hard. And it's not my journey. It's her journey.
Yeah.
What?
The answer is when that's hard is like, what are you going to do? Work harder, keep going after it, grind. That's the answer. Or are you going to quit?
Yeah.
Or are you going to grind? Like that's not coach's fault, whatever. Yeah, we all get into that mode, but like that's my answer all the time. What are you going to do?
Yes. Thank you so much. Where can people find you, connect with you if they want to reach out?
I would say probably they can find me at Brian Sackinsky. So my first name, Brian, Sackinsky, Sackinsky @gmail.com.
And on LinkedIn too, yeah?
Yeah, on LinkedIn. Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. Thanks for that call. That's probably a better area in terms of I share a lot of kind of philosophies. I try to engage with some posts on there as well. And again, all in an effort to try to help parents specifically sort of navigate their young folks and their young athletes journey. So happy to talk to anybody that reaches out to me there, connect to anybody. I'm really on the journey, like I said in the beginning, is connecting with like-minded people to share experiences and learnings in an effort to sort of further the conversation and like help one at a time, like one parent at a time, maybe have a better relationship or understand the journey better with their daughters or sons. So
thank you for listening. If you've made it this far, we've somehow rattled through an hour and 8 minutes without even blinking. So we have so much more. We can go deeper on this. Thank you. Like, follow, share. He is just joining Substack, so maybe we'll come back and do a Substack Live at some point. But it's so many great parenting, coaching, teaching lessons for us. And I think when we do our best and we'll hold up our hand and say we're not doing it perfectly either, we open the door for our kids to be able to do the same. So thank you so much.
thanks, Kirsten. Take care.